Inside a bottomless underwater cave, two divers are attempting to break their personal records, but when the diver in front turns around, he finds his companion has suddenly vanished. By the time he is found again, he is already a lifeless body sinking headfirst to the bottom. Years later, another veteran diver attempts to challenge this same spot. He brings top-of-the-line equipment and avoids every known trap, yet he still suffers sudden, uncontrollable convulsions underwater. This series of strange events is the story we are telling today, the Diepolder II Sinkhole cave diving tragedy. Diepolder Sinkhole is located in Hernando County, Florida. From the surface, there is nothing particularly special about this swampy land, but what few people know is that one of the deepest underwater caves in the United States is hidden beneath the surface. The cave system mainly consists of two sinkholes. The entrance to Diepolder II is extremely narrow, and because it connects to groundwater, the sinkhole tunnels have upstream and downstream sections. The known depth explored in the downstream tunnel exceeds 110 meters, although sinkhole number 3 is slightly shallower than number 2. Its depth still reaches 91 meters. Due to its unique structure and extreme depth, Diepolder Sinkhole once attracted many legendary figures. In 1979, diver Dale Sweet first reached a maximum depth of 110 meters in sinkhole number 2. This was also the first cave dive in human history to use mixed gas. At that time, Dale placed a small American flag in the cave, with a secret message written on the back for those who followed. This chamber was later known as the flag room. 1 year later, another pioneer of technical diving, Sheck Exley, reached the same depth using only compressed air. In 1987, Bill Gavin and Lamar English reached that depth once again, but other than them, very few divers at that time could reach the bottom of sinkhole number 2. It was said that the water inside was exceptionally clear, and the structure and scenery of the chambers were absolutely mesmerizing. It was precisely these rumors that attracted more and more divers. For example, on the night of May 11, 1990, 8 members of the FSR expedition team arrived in Florida to prepare for a night dive at sinkhole number 2. However, the FSR team did not intend to challenge the 110-meter depth. Instead, for safety and to conduct detailed mapping of the cave, the 8 members were divided into pairs and scheduled their dives at different times. 25-year-old Lloyd and his partner Clacy were the first group. Their diving mission was quite simple. They were to follow a pre-placed circular guideline to a depth of about 76 meters in the downstream tunnel, and return after reaching the area on the map called the ballroom. Lloyd was very excited about this, because he had just completed his cave diving training course 5 months earlier. This was not only his first time entering sinkhole number 2, but the planned depth was also a level he had never reached before. The two then strapped on their tanks, put on their masks, and jumped into sinkhole number 2 one after another. They descended vertically about 58 meters from a narrow opening at the bottom of the pond to reach the floor, and followed the plan to the right, into a small chamber called the connection room. But the sight before them made them frown. It turned out that heavy rains had recently hit the area. Rainwater pouring into the sinkhole had stirred up silt that had been settled for years. Despite the terrible visibility, both men held the guideline and didn't panic at all, because the ballroom guideline was a loop. As long as they kept swimming along it, they could return the way they came. The two first explored forward along the upper loop, and found that the water in the upper layer was very clear. Floating in the massive chamber, they felt like astronauts in space. During the process, Lloyd adjusted his buoyancy. After exchanging OK hand signals, they turned to descend slowly along the lower loop. The pair reached the planned depth of 76 meters as scheduled, which meant it was now time for the return leg. However, just then, the partner noticed that Lloyd seemed to intentionally let go of the guideline. His body began to sink slowly. Then he suddenly snapped out of it and kicked hard to swim forward. By the time Clacy quickly caught up, Lloyd had grabbed the rope again. Everything seemed to have returned to normal. Clacy was surprised but didn't panic. After all, they weren't far from the decompression point. When the two returned to the connection room again, it meant they had entered the area with the lowest visibility once more. What Clacy ahead didn't know was that Lloyd had lost his grip on the guideline again, and actually started swimming deeper in the opposite direction. At the same time, Clacy had already begun his planned decompression ascent. However, during the repeated decompression stops, Clacy never saw any sign of Lloyd. After reaching the 9-meter stop, he couldn't take it anymore. A strong sense of dread drove him to turn back and search, but he found nothing. Ultimately, Clacy had to surface alone and call for help. By the time the recovery team was assembled, 17 hours had passed, yet it took only 25 minutes to find Lloyd. The rescue team found Lloyd at a depth of 73 meters, lying headfirst at the bottom of the cave, and he was only a few steps away from the guideline. After 7 more hours of difficult labor, his body was finally brought to the surface. A subsequent analysis determined that Lloyd's cause of death was primarily the combined effect of nitrogen narcosis and CO2 toxicity. First, Lloyd was using standard compressed air, and most divers experience nitrogen narcosis around 30 meters. And as mentioned earlier, he was attempting to set a personal depth record. This excited state of challenging oneself is often the prelude to a loss of judgment. It caused him to ignore the symptoms of nitrogen narcosis. When he first let go of the guideline, he was already showing clear signs of narcosis. And when the two turned back into the murky connection room, Lloyd suffered another bout of nitrogen narcosis, causing him to lose contact with the guideline. It also triggered extreme panic in him. Under the conditions of rapid physical exhaustion and hyperventilation, carbon dioxide began to build up in Lloyd's body. Ultimately, under the dual effect of nitrogen narcosis and CO2 poisoning, Lloyd completely lost his sense of direction and depth. This explains why he abnormally swam toward the depths, since there were no signs of a struggle at the scene, and his mask was properly fitted with the regulator still in his mouth. It can be inferred that he drowned after losing consciousness. Although Lloyd had earned his full cave diving certification, he had actually only completed 75 cave dives. Consequently, the management further refined the access rules for the sinkhole. In addition to requiring full cave and trimix certifications, divers also had to show proof of 100 cave dives. But unexpectedly, tragedy struck again. 9 years later, a 29-year-old diver from Italy named Guido and his friend Simon came to Diepolder Sinkhole, drawn by its reputation. As experienced cave divers, both fully met the entry requirements. Even to be safe, they hired an underwater guide named Sandra. At 5 p.m. on April 26, the group signed waivers, donned their heavy gear and leaped into the dark opening. Since their target depth was nearly 92 meters, to reduce the risk of nitrogen narcosis, all three used trimix gas. They passed through a 58-meter narrow vertical shaft, and after entering the connection room, they reached the final destination of this dive, the ballroom. Under the beam of their lights, the visibility here was excellent. Unique creatures seemed to drift around them. The divers were stunned by the sight before them. After satisfyingly exploring and taking photos, everyone began their return journey as planned. Due to staying in deep water for a while, the three had to strictly follow staged decompression stop procedures to let the nitrogen dissolved in their bodies release slowly. Otherwise, they would suffer from severe decompression sickness. Typically, divers place multiple backup cylinders at various depth stops in advance, and the gas ratios in these cylinders are different. Simply put, the shallower the depth, the higher the oxygen content in the backup cylinder. For example, a bottle of pure oxygen might even be placed at the 6-meter stop. Breathing pure oxygen at this point can accelerate the expulsion of inert gases, greatly shortening the decompression time. But this is provided it is used near the surface. Otherwise, the oxygen required to sustain life becomes a highly toxic gas. Unfortunately, Guido did not leave his pure oxygen in the shallows as required, but carried it with him deep underwater. Even more unfortunately, when the three rose to the 36-meter decompression stop, Guido made an operational error, and took a deep breath from the pure oxygen cylinder. Immediately, his body began to convulse violently and uncontrollably. His companions Simon and Sandra rushed to help, but it all happened far too fast. Taking a huge breath of pure oxygen at this depth instantly caused central nervous system oxygen toxicity in Guido. Worst of all, Guido clenched his teeth during the convulsions, and the regulator fell out of his mouth, meaning his companions couldn't even help him switch back to a safe air source. Under these circumstances, his companions had no choice but to try to bring him to the surface as quickly as possible. But the problem was that dragging an unconscious person upward is fraught with difficulties. In the end, they had to temporarily leave Guido underwater. Then they proceeded with their planned decompression ascent, and surfaced safely about an hour after Guido had drowned. The rescue team recovered the body late that night. The autopsy results ruled out foul play, meaning it was entirely a tragic accident. In fact, within seconds of inhaling the pure oxygen, his central nervous system was essentially paralyzed. Even if he had been rushed to the hospital right then, his chances of survival were slim to none. Whether it was the less experienced Lloyd or the highly skilled Guido, they both proved that there is no room for error in cave diving. One mistake is often your last.